today for the Fostering Authentic Online Discussions in the Age of AI. This is one of our now named AI Insights series, where we look at different sort of capabilities and integrations of AI in your online, blended, and even face-to-face classes. If you would go to the next slide, please, Emily. Thank you. Emily's assisting me with the slide issues today because I've been having such trouble with that. So thank you, Emily. Our next AI Insight workshop is on exploring custom chatbots, and that's on Tuesday, August 13th at 11 a.m. We'll be co-presenting that with Peg Checky. And Daniel, are you participating in that as well?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, just forgot momentarily. We encourage you to come to that, and we'll have many more to come. So this workshop is going to be about an hour long. We have some interactions planned, as well as some just didactic content to talk you through some of the current capabilities and options for you when you are designing and redesigning your discussions and your interactions or activities in your course. But please feel free to, unmute, ask a question, use the chat, and we'll be following along and answering questions as they come up. So as you all, I think I know all of you. I'm Laura. I'm an instructional designer with Citi, and I'll be co-presenting with Emily today. Emily, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily. I think I know many of you as well. I'm also an instructional designer with Citi.
Great. Thank you, Emily. And next slide, please. Okay, so here are our learning objectives for today. I'm not going to read each one word for word. But as you can see, we're going to be looking at the potential impact of generative AI tools on our online discussion forums, looking at why we use discussion forums, how we can rethink them given the advent of generative AI, and also identifying some alternatives to discussion forums that can both leverage AI technology and also serve as evidence of substantive interaction in your online courses. Next slide, please. So we'd like to begin with an icebreaker activity that examines whether or not AI wrote a discussion post. And I want to begin with two different prompts. The first prompt is from our AI literacy and ethics discussion guide. And the second, I believe we wrote for this workshop. Take a moment to read through those prompts. As you can see, they're framed and worded quite differently, right? The second one invites more reflection on integration of personal experience. So two different kinds of prompts, right? We'll see whether or not AI wrote the posts in response to them. All right, let's take a look at the response. Okay, did AI write this post? This is a long, a lot of text here, but take a moment to look at it and then answer yes or no, verbally or in the chat, whether or not you think AI wrote this post. I know it's a lot to read. What do you think? Paula Jo, yes, AI wrote it or parts of it. Okay, Samantha says yes. Colleen says yes. So we have 4 yeses. All or part of the post was written by AI. Great, let's take a look at another one.
And here we have an example from the second prompt, and I'll give you a moment to read it, but again, same sort of activity. So let us know either by unmuting yourselves or in the chat if you think AI wrote it or a human wrote it.
Okay, Sarah says she's not sure AI is going to say it is biased. Okay. And I believe that's in response to the first prompt or the first discussion post.
All right, anyone willing to okay.
Okay.
So Paula Jo says no, she doesn't think AI wrote the post. All right. Sarah says it seems like it was written by a person. Daniel says human as well. Okay. All right, so we have some responses. Laura, do you want to do the big
Yeah,
reveal?
so I'll reveal the answer. Both of these posts were written by AI, right? Which may be shocking, right? And we say this, we include these examples not to scare you, but to show you 2 examples of how generative AI tools can be used to respond to discussion prompts, even to the extent that the AI tool fabricates experiences in response to a personalized question. So in this workshop, we're going to hopefully give you some strategies to help you kind of navigate this new era, right, of generative AI tools, whether authorized or not, use in discussions, and help you to determine how to promote student engagement and authentic voice in their discussion responses. We'll also look at, again, back to the learning objectives, some alternatives to discussions so that, well, we'll look at some alternatives to discussions that can, again, serve as great types of interaction in your online courses. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And again, feel free to ask questions, unmute, seek clarification at any point in our presentation. Emily, could you go to the next slide, please? Oh, sorry, are you having mouse issues?
No, sorry, did I miss a slide?
Oh no, did I maybe my Zoom has frozen. Are you showing the understanding the landscape slide?
Oh yeah, sorry, I respond to that. Let me.
That's okay.
Now you come from a course, so let's see.
Now I see the understanding the landscape.
You do. Okay. I'm still seeing the last slide. It could be, well, I'll continue assuming that understanding the landscape is showing for everyone else. Please let us know. If not, it looks like I'm having issues as well. So as we've seen, discussion forums, both graded and ungraded, are still widely used, or as we know, discussion forums are widely used in online and blended courses. And as you've probably, seen in your facilitation or participation in discussions, typical format typically includes, written responses to discussion questions and required replies to peers over the course of 1 or more weeks or modules. And discussions also serve as evidence of substantive interaction in such courses. And we know that substantive interaction is a requirement of online courses required by accrediting bodies. And due to the design of many learning management systems, discussion forums are a very common way to demonstrate that type of engagement. Within the last few years, though, we've seen transformative changes, right, in higher education and online learning and elsewhere, right? There was COVID, of course, and then the advent of generative AI. And these two very transformative events, have affected higher education in general and online learning in particular. So, for example, in 2020, many of us shifted to remote learning, and many of us remained there. And with the emergence of generative AI in 2020, late 2022, but for most of us, early 2023, we noticed AI's unique applications and challenges in the online learning environment. So as we demonstrated in our icebreaker activity, AI is capable of writing accurate and thoughtful responses to discussion prompts. And we know that there are really no reliable AI detection tools out there. So where do we go from here, and how should the online discussion forum evolve? What are the alternatives? And I ask these questions to allow you to ponder them, both during this session and afterward, and hopefully we'll attempt to answer some of them throughout this workshop. So next slide, please, even though I can't see it, if you could let me know when the silly slide is up.
It's up.
Okay, great. So the perils of forced engagement. So while this is a funny and extreme example of when discussion forums don't work, I'm sure we've all participated in discussions where that didn't feel particularly meaningful, right? That felt kind of forced. Hence, wow, Jim, I totally agree. I like how you added the twos together to get four. It's so insightful. Great post, right? Posting and replying, right, for the sake of posting and replying, but without actually any real productive discussion happening. How do we ensure that this doesn't happen in our courses? And I think that's it for now. Emily, if you want to jump into your section next.
Sure. Before we get into some of the additional strategies that Laura will discuss in terms of making sure that our discussion forums are meaningful, I'm going to pause just for a moment to share a few more capabilities that AI has that might impact assessments in general, and especially online discussion forums. And again, I want to reiterate that I'm not showing you this to scare you or to encourage you to, quote, catch your students, but really just so you're aware of the current capabilities. I keep thinking of the phrase, forewarned is forearmed. I don't really like the militaristic implications of that, but I feel like if you're more aware of what are the capabilities are, it can be helpful. So one of the first tools that is really proliferating right now are these AI text humanizer tools. If you like, you might Google AI text humanizer if you have another screen open, and what you'll see is there are just dozens and dozens of these kinds of tools that are explicitly designed to take AI generated text and then refine it so it sounds less AI generated. So these are increasingly common. Some also have built-in features to help students see if someone were to use an AI detector, what the potential score for their output would be. Second tool, and this is actually what we use to generate those responses in our initial icebreaker about did AI generate this text. This is a tool from HyperWrite, and it's explicitly designed to create discussion board prompts and responses. So as you can see here, you can input the prompt or the question, and you can specify aspects of the topic that you want it to focus on, or even tone and style, as we saw in that second example in the icebreaker that was written in a first-person style, seems highly personalized. So AI is also capable of that. And please bear with us, don't cry or run away yet. I'm going to go through two more capabilities. One is it's also very easy to customize AI to write in a particular style. on the left, I have a screenshot from a feature from ChatGPT, and it allows you to put in custom instructions. So I could put in, I'm a student in X discipline, unless I specify, and pardon me for the typo there, unless I specify my audience is X. And I can also give specific instructions about words to use or to avoid that sound AI-ish in my perspective anyway. You can also train a chatbot to mimic your style by uploading samples of your writing and then giving it a detailed prompt. I actually asked GPT, I think it was GPT, to generate this prompt, and I said, help me generate a prompt to train the tool to emulate or imitate my writing style. And so these are all the ways that you can sort of use AI to learn to produce content in the style in which you're writing. All right, let's see. And one more. And pardon me, because the video started going before I could explain it. This is another capability of AI in which you can take a static image, pair it with a vocal source, and it will generate a video. So it looks like an actual video that someone made, a recording of themselves, but it's really an AI generated video of a portrait paired with text or vocalization. So these are just sort of a snapshot of different AI capabilities that have really advanced since November 2022 and that have the potential to influence the kinds of activities or assessments that we give to our students. What I want to stress here is as AI keeps getting more capable, is that we really can't outsmart the tech. It will be increasingly difficult to do that. But Laura is going to discuss in just a few minutes some ways to work with the factors that we can influence. And I did see a few comments in the chat. Are there anything that we want to address before we go forward? Okay.
Thank you, Emily. Yep, sorry. Go ahead.
Nope, that's it. Looks like you got it. So we're on the rethinking discussion slide now.
Okay, well, I jumped back in, and it's I guess my video is frozen again because I still see the generated video, but that's okay. We can keep going. So where do we go from here? As Emily indicated, we can't outsmart the technology. Really, it's going to just continually get better. But we can do things to make our discussions and our assignments in general more worthwhile, more meaningful, and better directed toward our learning goals. So Emily, if you would advance to the next slide, please. Let me know when that's done.
It is done.
Great. So let's reflect on the purpose of discussions, right? What are your instructional goals when designing and facilitating discussions? If you want to share that with the group or pop that in the chat, I've included a few here: creating community, fostering inclusivity, practicing understanding, developing critical thinking skills, sharing perspectives, debating viewpoints. What are you looking for as an instructor when you design and facilitate your discussions? Or if you just want to echo some of the ones that are already there, if those are more meaningful for you, to you, than any others. Okay, so Samantha says that students can apply what was taught in lecture to a real world scenario or application. That's great. So real world, authentic learning, right? Paula Jo says, in my program or course, the focus is more on critical thinking and offering their opinions or views on the topics. Also application of topic to their world. So yes, critical thinking, integration of personal views, reflections, at real world application, like Samantha also said. Anyone else? Great. So we can go ahead and move to the next slide then. Community and inclusivity. Yes, great. Yes. And, community for me is one of the key kind of elements of creating and, fostering productive and engaging discussions in your courses. So are we at the Venn diagram, Emily?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So fortunately, we'll see that while nearly so much has changed, right? But some things haven't. And hopefully this is somewhat reassuring to you all that best practices in designing, facilitating, and evaluating discussion engagement still apply in the age of AI. So with AI in the mix, we can still apply some of these really evidence-based best practices in discussion and designing and facilitating discussions in your courses. So let's take a look at what those are, or just sort of talk about sort of the governing ideas behind them. Emily, if you could advance to the first teaching with AI slide.
So I'm on why should I care about this? Is that the right slide?
Yep. Why should I care about this? Yes.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you. So before we discuss these, I'd like to introduce an idea that we talked a lot about, Emily and I, and that I think we really shapes a lot of the recommendations that we'll talk about today and extends even beyond the discussion space, right? Has anyone read this book? It was just published, I believe, in April 2024. It's called Teaching with AI by Bowen and Watson. If you haven't, the reference is in the references at the end of the slides, which we'll share after the workshop. But it includes some really, practical applications of ideas about teaching in the age of AI, not necessarily in the discussion space, but in all areas of your course. So this is this idea of I care, I can, I matter, that was put forth in this book. And in this book, the authors suggest that while you can never really remove the possibility that students will violate your course policy and use AI without consent, we can design our assessments in a way that encourages student engagement, motivation, and they advocate the I care, I can, I matter approach toward doing this. So what is it? It may be sort of self-evident in the terms that are used, but essentially it boils down to the value of motivation, student motivation and engagement in your online courses. So I care. Does this assignment have purpose? Does it have relevance? Is it meaningful? Is this activity worthwhile, right? Many of us teach adult learners whose approach to learning is largely pragmatic, right? They want to know why they're doing something and how it's directed toward their learning goals, not just for the sake of doing it. So articulating the purpose of your assignment is really key here, and reiterating that throughout the duration of your course, really, in all of your assignments. I can, the student believes that they can do it, right? And this largely has to do with self-efficacy, right? Which is, as the authors suggest, largely domain specific. Can the student reasonably achieve or experience these, what they call mastery experiences in your course and in your assignments? If they can, and they get feedback on their ability to do so from you and their peers, it will increase their confidence and motivation. This is, I think, even connected or extends to and specific to the space of discussion forums because they are public and they're designed to create a feeling of belonging or within a community of learners. So, excuse me, students are not only demonstrating to themselves that they can do something, right? But they're also demonstrating it to their peers and to you. So there's a social aspect to that as well. And then I matter. Is anyone listening? Will what I say make a difference? Excuse me. And here we have the sort of the value of the student's voice, right? In practical terms, this may not only be applied to the design of your discussions, but also to your discussion facilitation and evaluation. Engaging in discussions with students by replying to their peers, giving them actionable feedback, calling out students who post exemplary responses in your replies or your announcements, modeling participation. All of this shows that what a student is posting matters. Someone is reading it and cares enough to respond, just like you would do in any type of face-to-face discussion that you're having with another person. You would advance to the next slide, please, Emily.
I've advanced.
So I pulled this quote from the book because I really thought it really encapsulated a lot of what these authors are arguing. Quote, "We need to clarify further what we want students to learn, why it's valuable, and especially why the effort and discomfort required are necessary." And the emphasis there is mine, because we've been talking a lot about the concept of productive struggle, right? When using and teaching in the era of AI, articulating why your struggle is necessary to the learning process, why you shouldn't, let AI do the work because it is integral to your learning and to your goals. And articulating that may be a way of sort of mitigating that unauthorized use. How will this struggle, this effort and discomfort show me the value of completing the work on my own and being proud of what I've produced? And we'll come back to that as we talk about setting expectations in your discussions. Next slide, please.
All right. And
thank you. So I don't want to talk too much, at length about this. We're already at the half hour. But so this is all good in theory, right? But how can we actually apply these ideas to discussion design in the age of AI? So here are 6 suggestions. These are not the only ones, but they are a good start. And they go back to some of these ideas we've been talking about, especially the I care, I can, and I matter approach. So making something personal and motivating, connecting it back to a student's individual experiences as a member of their course, as a member of that learning community or university community. And that goes back to articulating the purpose. Aligning and connecting back to existing or previously used course materials or concepts. You could approach this in a scaffolding sense where you ask students to recall or integrate what they've done previously in the course in the context of the discussion. Thinking local, connecting back to your university community, class and program culture. You might, talk specifically about Rush and their experience there. I mean, that too can also be fabricated by AI, right? So again, we're not trying to create an AI-proof discussion, but rather, again, connecting back to that point of creating purpose and meaning to motivate students and create engagement. Incorporating variety, shaking up the discussion format. We don't want to force engagement, but allow choice, right? Selecting from different discussion prompts, maybe incorporating peer review, incorporating fun, right? Role play, debate, other types of unorthodox approaches to and fun approaches to constructing a discussion. Integrating multimedia. Well, we know that AI can create a video, right? Maybe so can your students, right? And so students can take a photo and annotate or share it at something in their immediate environment and talk about it. And then lastly, as always, providing support, making it achievable and reasonable. And this goes back to that concept of I can, right? I can be successful at this, given the tools and the resources the instructor has provided me. Next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of AI, in terms of discussion redesign with AI, because we just talked about, what you could do in the absence of AI, we could look at maybe look at it along a scale. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Leon Fers's AI assessment scale, but this is just one of many approaches where you can redesign your discussions with some of the aforementioned suggestions, either without the use of AI, as in the no AI end of the scale, or by fully redesigning with AI. And we'll show you an example of this in a moment by one of your peers, this full AI approach. But this is just really to demonstrate that it doesn't have to be all or nothing in your discussions or your assessments, right? Conscientious and thoughtful incorporation is really key. Next slide, please. So there are different ways you can do that, right? I don't want to talk about too many of these in detail because I think we're running a bit behind time, but there's lots of ways to incorporate AI, whether it be, as first suggested, on the lower end of the scale for idea generation, or comparing and contrasting outputs, helping with writing, create and critiquing multimedia outputs, examining AI specifically in your discipline, as we indicated with the sample AI ethics discussion question, and concept clarification. So just a sort of grab bag of some approaches as to how you could use AI, incorporating it in your discussions. So let's take an example here. We're moving on to improve this prompt, please, Emily. And we have a discussion prompt here. What are the social factors that serve as fundamental causes of disease? How can policy change and programmatic interventions aimed at social factors influence population health? So this might be a kind of standard discussion post or prompt that you may see. Maybe not, but this is from a person who's not a subject matter expert in your field, so myself. How would you improve this prompt if you were to incorporate any of the number of suggestions that we just looked at in discussion redesign in the age of AI? Anyone want to share in the chat or verbally? Samantha says maybe add some content from lecture. Great. Preceding the questions. Yeah, Emily, if you want to just click on the forward button, we'll see an example of that. Refer back to chapter 2 in our module discussion. You see how something like that connects back to previous course concepts, right? Something that AI can't do all that well unless students were to upload all of that content and engagement into an AI tool. Any other suggestions? Again, how we would improve this prompt, both with and without AI in the mix. As you respond, we'll share, just for the sake of time, a couple of others. Emily, if you want to show all those others that are suggested beneath that first one. I'm not sure if they're showing, but hopefully. The second one says share personal experience of example of how you've observed interventions in your practice. Create a video testimonial. Paula Jo says maybe ask about social factors they've seen in their city. That's a great example, right? And that sort of goes back to the idea of thinking local, right? So to what extent have you observed, you could say, these social factors in their own environment and their own. Paula Costello, referring back to specific readings similar to the initial examples. Great. Samantha says a specific policy that's relevant to their field. And then at the end, we have an example of how you could integrate and use AI to redesign. Just one of endless numbers of approaches to doing that. But thank you so much for your feedback. I mean, hopefully this should just sort of get you thinking about how you can give your discussion prompts a jump start by integrating some of these ideas, both with and without the inclusion of AI. I think Emily is next.
Okay. And I'm just going to give you a brief example of assignment by one of your colleagues, Professor Claudia Martinez, who teaches professional writing. And this is actually a discussion forum in which she allowed her student, actually required her students to use ChatGPT And so you can see here the prompt that this is an assignment from early on this summer, and she had her students sign up for a ChatGPT account, and she asked them to put in a very specific prompt. It's in the middle of the screen, so it's requesting a 50-word opinion piece about the use of AI to write an academic essay. She then had students post the AI's response into the discussion forum. But I think what is crucial here is the students didn't just use AI, then they had to reflect and critique the use of AI for the assessment and indicate, was the piece actually well written, and defend their position. So this is one, I think, innovative way to incorporate AI into discussion forums without giving over all the work to AI. I would say another possibility or another kind of permutation would be to do something similar, have students put in their initial response from the chatbot and then have them revise that response, which is typically, I think, how one would work with AI. I think oftentimes you wouldn't want to just use the very first output that you receive. All right, so I think we're going to pause just for a minute. Let's see if there's any comments in the chat. Okay, yeah, there's some comments in response to Laura's earlier activity. What I'd like to do before we proceed is just take a minute, and I'd like to learn from you that when you are creating or designing discussion forums for your classes, what is your primary goal in using this kind of interaction?
Emily, this is Paula Jo. I'll just pipe in. So in one of my courses, I teach issues and trends in healthcare. So I'm really looking for students to share their opinions and their views on the various issues going on in healthcare or the various trends. And so, this is really helpful because I'm always concerned that what they post is not necessarily their view or their opinion, that it's an AI's view or opinion. And so finding a way to make sure it truly is theirs and not something they had generated is one of the issues that I'm most concerned about.
All right, that's really helpful. Thanks, Paula. Anyone else want to share about, as you think about crafting or preparing your discussion forums, do you have a primary goal in mind? And if so, what is that goal? And if people aren't ready to share right now, that's fine. Maybe just think of it as something rhetorical or something you're reflecting on. I guess I thank you again, Paula, for answer some ideas that I thought is, there's clearly the social or communal component of AI, or sorry, discussion forums. There's depending on the kind of interaction that you create, you might want students not only to interact with each other, but also engage with some body of course materials or a text. So it's possible that maybe you have multiple goals when you're creating discussion forums, so that might get hard to answer this question. We'll keep this question in the back of our mind. What I'd like to do now, though, is just for a few minutes talk about what are some alternatives to discussion forum. And then we'll come back to this thread of developing your discussion forums in light of Watson and Bowen's theory. Right. So depending on your goals with discussion forums, what I'd like to suggest is that you might consider using different kinds of tools that can do similar things. And a first alternative to discussion forums that I really like are social annotation tools. There's a few that are very common. And if you're interested, feel free to email me afterwards, and I'm happy to meet with you and talk about them in greater detail. What we're looking at right now is a screenshot from a tool called Perusal it can integrate into Canvas. And basically what it does is it allows the instructor to upload a text, a podcast, a video, and then students will read the text or listen to the podcast, whatever, and they're allowed to highlight and mark up the text. And as you can see on the right side of the screen, there are little initials that indicate who made what comment. So you can have students, you can see the way that students engage with a text or document, but you can also see the way that they engage with each other in a discussion about a specific document. This activity or kind of activity works I think, very well if you're interested in how your students are engaging in a social way and interacting with a specific source text. And you can use a variety of kinds of answers. It may not be clear from all the emojis that you see in the right-hand side of the screen, but you can use a text response, a video response, emojis, you can link things, you can create graphs and charts. So it's a very interactive way for students and for you to engage with materials. Another alternative that I would suggest, especially for larger or scaffolded assessments, is to consider using peer review as a way for your students to engage with one another and to provide feedback as a potential alternative to discussion forums. And Canvas has a wonderful peer review tool that's built in. It allows you can specifically assign I could assign Daniel to review Laura's assignment if I wanted to, or I could randomize it. The reviewers can be known or it can be anonymous. And to me, this is valuable because peer review is a social activity, but it also mimics what many students will do upon completion of their degrees and in their careers. They will frequently engage in peer review research or have their research peer reviewed. So it helps them practice their communication skills and practice giving appropriate feedback. It refines their critical thinking. It can help you break up a larger assessment into smaller steps so that students receive feedback that you don't necessarily have to be the one to give it, but they are getting it from their peers. And it can also help them hone their techniques for assessing and improving their own work. These are just a few other alternatives that some of you may be using already. So you might try using collaborative documents like a Google Doc or a shared OneDrive doc that students could use for collaborative brainstorming or mind mapping or all sorts of creative activities that have a social component. I know a lot of you use collaborative presentations, so I think that's a nice alternative to discussion forums as well. I don't think Catherine Osborne is here today, but I know she uses a lot of debate in her class, and earlier Laura mentioned role playing, so those are some other nice possibilities for social learning. And as we mentioned before, video presentation. And I just want to mention one more thing before I hand the presentation back over to Laura, and that is regular and substantive interaction. And oftentimes when we think of RSI, discussion forums seem to be the first thing that comes to mind, and they are a great way to meet that requirement. But I just wanted to include a reminder about there are a variety of other ways that you can meet that RSA requirement. Some of those are to post regular and informative Canvas announcements. You can provide timely, constructive, and in-depth feedback on assessments. You can schedule online review sessions, tutorials, and office hours. You might create a post-assessment follow-up that includes summaries of commonly missed questions and instructional support or advice for studying for the next assessment. One that we really like at City is to conduct a mid-semester review to allow your students to give feedback. And you can also schedule check-ins with students who aren't submitting their work on time, maybe they're struggling or not actively participating. All right, and I'm seeing some great comments in the chat about uses of discussion forums, and it seems like people got a little bit of a chance to reflect on their goals. So that's great. Thanks so much for sharing that. I'm going to advance the slide, and now we're back to Laura with setting expectation.
Great. Well, thank you, Emily. And I do want to give some time for just open discussion. So I think this is our last slide before we do that. But I think it's important. This is really a key aspect of your discussion redesign or approach to discussions in your courses is really the value of setting expectations for your students. And so I've included a number of recommendations here for how you can do that in the age of AI and also without it, providing clear guidelines and a policy statement, even so far as a specific, discussion AI policy statement in that discussion. It's maybe something you reuse or modify for each discussion you conduct, but defining the acceptable use of AI in those discussions is really key. Reiterating the importance of assignment learning objectives. Again, this goes back to purpose and meaning, engaging in what we call, productive struggle, desirable difficulties, why it's important that students complete this discussion on their own, either without the use of AI or with AI only to complete, certain parts of it. But, how it's directed toward their learning, their goals, and their future careers potentially. And then develop a plan to address academic integrity issues, right? So if you suspect, even if you can't rely upon a tool to tell you that, if you suspect that a student has used AI in an unauthorized way in the context of their discussion post, you might decide to, and I would recommend, which is something I've done before, set a meeting with that student or a phone call, right? And ask students to talk through the content of their post. Can they verbally articulate what they wrote? In which case, you can then gauge their understanding of that content there. But I would encourage you to not accuse, but rather sort of ask, feel out their process. Perhaps maybe not for discussion posts, but for other assignments. Do they have, do they have drafts or other types of materials that they use and they can share with you? And then, reiterate the course and assignment AI policy. And this is, I put this last point in bold because I really think it's key. Emphasizing the value of the student's authentic voice as the key to success. And we know that not all students will care about this, right? But I've seen it in my own teaching practice really work. Letting a student know that it's your voice, their voice you're looking for. You want to hear what they have to say about something according to their experiences, not what AI thinks. And this, again, connects back to the concept of I can and I matter, because it shows you're listening and want them to succeed. And I would recommend just telling them that, right? It's remarkable in my experience how much, we can all be affected by these words and by these exchanges with faculty and with students. So again, this is not going to, eliminate that risk or the possibility or that students will use AI without permission. But it does help, I think, to reframe your expectations for your students in your discussions and throughout, your other course activities and assessments. So, Emily, if you could advance to the next slide. I see the chat is kind of blowing up here, which is awesome. We'd really love to hear from you. We have about 6 minutes left. What are your concerns, questions, thoughts, experiences? We'd love to know and for you to share them with your peers. Feel free to unmute or put your questions or comments in the chat or continue to do that.
I'll just mention what I put in the chat, just from listening, excuse me, and participating today. I just get a sense that the onus is really on us to design these discussion experiences so that the student doesn't rely on AI, doesn't fall back to just using AI to participate. That's my sense. I mean, so I think you gave us some great tools and different examples and ways to modify or look at our discussion forums to make them more engaging for students and to reach the goals that we have set forth of what we want out of these discussions. But I do feel like the onus is on us as faculty or as the instructor. Otherwise, I just feel like we're setting up the students to use AI, and then we're getting upset that they're using AI, you know, because our discussion forum question is so easily able to be plugged into, you know, Claude or something and spit out an answer. So I just feel like faculty really need a lot more education in this area to make sure that we aren't setting up things where students are just relying on AI because they're just at wit's end of what to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's
my thought.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, sorry. And Emily, if you want to chime in, I think that's a really valid point. And I didn't want to I didn't want that to be a governing theme of the workshop, that, you know, these are more things we're asking you guys to do. And I don't think that but as Emily said in the chat, right, influencing the factors that we can control. I mean, having that policy there and explicitly stating it, and, you know, at some point student responsibility comes into play, and that's important. And if they're violating that policy, there are consequences, right? So not all of the burden is on faculty, I don't think, but it is challenging, right? Things have, you know, how we teach and how we learn are going to be radically transformed by these tools. And I think that, you know, it can be overwhelming to ponder that and to think about how we perhaps to some degree need to change how we teach. And Emily, did you want to add to that?
No, I mean, I think I would echo the same thing. I think, Paula Jo, I appreciate your comment. We certainly don't want it to make us seem like a burden, but I think you are right in some ways, since it's very difficult to accurately detect AI, and there's always the possibility that there could be a misaccusation with that. So that's not something we recommend. And so right now, adjusting our assessments, even if you start small or with a single assessment, I think is probably the best way to mitigate that use or potential use.
Yeah, I don't see it as a burden, and I don't think that's the way you presented it at all. I just really strongly believe that faculty have a responsibility to stay current in their practices. And I think this is one of those areas that we as faculty need to be educated on to stay current, and appreciate the fact that City has embraced all of this and is providing all these different workshops and educational materials for us. So I don't see it as a burden. I just think that's the responsibility of faculty, that this is what we should be doing. I mean, we would, if it wasn't AI, it would be something else that we would need to kind of get up to speed on how to use it or how to approach students with it. So I just think it's our responsibility to educate ourselves and how best to work with the students with this technology.
I appreciate that, Paula Jo. And I guess one thing that is helpful for us is to know how we can assist faculty in that process. If there's specific kinds of resources or training, or there's been some discussions of having AI faculty as AI champions, because your voices are so important in reaching your peers. So if there's ideas that you have that you can relay to us to how to amplify this message, it's always appreciated.
Yeah, or how we can support you in this effort, right?
Right.
Both, right? Because we're here to help you with that, so you don't feel like you're on your own out there doing it. Any other comments, questions, feedback, suggestions? Thank you, Paula Jo. Thank you. Yes, Paula. Oh, great. I'm glad you liked that. We can work on that and creating more. Thank you, Samantha. You're welcome.
May I just add that we're in the process of planning our fall offerings. And so this is a great time for you to let City know if there's a specific kind of workshop in terms of AI that's helpful to you. I think one that we will certainly have is using AI for research. And I think it's a good possibility that we will sort of have like a new introduction to AI for people who haven't had a chance to use it or maybe haven't used it lately. But like I said, it's really helpful to hear from you what you think would help you the most.
Absolutely. And Emily, if you wouldn't mind, since it is 11 o'clock, jumping to the last couple of slides for those that need to jump off. Here are some resources. We'll share out the recording and the link to the slide deck if you want to refer back. And as always, again, reach out to us if you need any assistance or have questions about any of this. And then at the end, we have, on the last slide, we have our exit ticket. So if you wouldn't mind taking a moment to complete that, letting us know how we did, giving us some feedback about, again, what you'd like to see in this AI Insight series and other workshops. We would love to hear more from you about how best we can assist you. Thank you all for attending. It is 11:01. I'm happy to stick around for a few more minutes if anyone else has any questions or things they want to talk through. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you soon.